This is the Literary License Podcast with your hosts, Vicky Ray, John Wilson, and Keith Shorgo. Discussing book to screen and everything in between. Coming at you from the UK and USA.
They keep it real.
Why do you let two strangers come into your house and turn the place upside down? Why expose the family to a couple of snoopers?
Explain it. You came here and Mother's so happy. I'm glad that she named me after you and that she thinks we're both alike. I think we are too. I know it. It would spoil things if she'd given me.
You're a strange girl, Charlie. Why would it spoil things?
Because we're not just another romance. Something else. I know you. I know that you don't tell people a lot of things. I don't either. I have a feeling that inside you somewhere there's something nobody knows about.
Something nobody knows.
Something secret and wonderful. I'll find it out.
Not good to find out too much, Charlie. How do you know what the world is like? Do you know the world is a foul sty? Do you know if you ripped the fronts off houses, you'd find swine? The world's a hell. What does it matter what happens in it? Wake up, Charlie. Use your wits. Learn something.
Hello, welcome to the Literary License Podcast, and today we're going to be discussing The Shadow of a Doubt, the 1943 classic by Alfred Hitchcock. And before we get started, let's sit there and say who's with us today. And today we have the lone Theresa Wright, who's with us. Say hello, Vicky.
Hi, people.
Unfortunately, John's not with us because he's in New Orleans having a life with his work colleagues.
This is where Keith says, fuck you.
We also like to mention that we also still have Seat Giant with us on www.seatgiant.com, and that's SEATGIANT.com. And if you decide to book any tickets for any Christmas, films, theater, or concerts, go to their website, book a ticket to them, and use LL Podcast and discount code, and you'll get 20% off. So, Vicky, what have you been up to this week?
I finished up Bates Hotel. I thought it was a train wreck. I couldn't stop watching, so I kind of binge watched all 5 seasons. And if you like stuff like that, I strongly suggest watching it because I really enjoyed it. It was really just totally twisty, turny, and just all out wrong. Most of it was just wrong. And I started reading the Shannara Chronicles again, and with the holidays coming, my grandson got invited because he does really well at BMX. We're going to Tulsa for the national championships. Other than that, we're just getting ready for the holidays.
Well,
what about
Tulsa, well, me, it's not a lot, actually. Just been reading books. I read 3 this week. 2 are okay. 1 was actually really good, so they're up on our website as far as book reviews go. Been watching a bit of TV, still watching American Horror Story. We're actually 2 weeks behind the American side of it.
Oh, that's right. I finished watching it. I finished watching it a morning ago. I taped it because I hate the commercials, so you'll like the ending.
So I'd say it's been a very good season this year. I'm very happy with it.
I was happy with it, too. I liked it a lot.
And what else? Not really, just watching the normal stuff, Riverdale and...
Yep, watching Riverdale.
I've been watching a lot of Christmas movies recently. I'm a sucker for those Hallmark Christmas movies.
I know. I try to turn those sickening things on myself and find myself fascinatingly watching. And it's just like, well, I'll just give it few more minutes. And it's like, okay, well, I'm into the plot now. So I'm going to keep watching it.
And you find yourself all teary-eyed by the end of it. It's like, oh, this is so beautiful. And you're thinking, God, I am so wet. This is totally against my darkness.
Whatever.
But, well, I mean, Netflix had a new one up that started on yesterday, and I watched that called the, I can't remember, but it did have Vanessa Hudgens on it and Sam Palladino from Nashville, who's a very strapping, nice-looking guy, and I actually got to hear him with his actual English accent, because he's actually from England, even though you wouldn't know it watching Nashville when he was on there.
You know what? Sort of like The Walking Dead. I mean, when you realize that these people are from Great Britain or from Australia, and it's just like how they do their part and sound American and just stick to it. I'm always fascinated with how they do that. I always found it a bit weird, because the other way around, if you get Americans trying to do any other accent, sometimes they're a bit bad. Sometimes you get like that Dick Van Dyke, Mary Poppins kind of English accent, which is kind of which makes everyone. I'm always fascinated with how they do that.
But yeah, I often kind of wondering as far as American actors must be getting so peeved off at everything, because they're probably watching all these American TV shows and American movies.
They're all for the British.
They're all British, and you're probably thinking, I could have done that. I mean, I don't know what American actors are doing, but they can't be very happy about it. So
no, well, actually, I'm not too big a fan of Hollywood lately, because they're also preachy to us poor huddled masses lately. But I do think that there's something to the British invasion as far as it comes to acting, because they really are excellent actors for the most part, and they keep their part, they nail it. You know, like I said, The Walking Dead, how many Brits are on that? And, and you got Fear of the Walking Dead. There's so many other shows that go off on a litany of them, and there's British actors. And I think a lot of the time is because they're unknown faces, and people want to see unknown faces, and then they evolve, as you go through the seasons or whatever, for each show. But they do a wonderful job. They really do. Except for the writers of The Walking Dead, who totally friggin' threw that one out last Sunday.
Well, I think the problem with The Walking Dead is I think that if they had a bit more light moments in it, I think it probably would have done a bit better and kept its audience a little bit. I think that when you make everything as depressing week after week after week with no levity, no bit of lightness. I mean, I was reading about Alfred Hitchcock scripts and stuff like this, and what he would do when he had a really tense moment, he always threw a little bit of humor, a little bit of character acting in there, and that he goes, that made things more scary. But the thing is, you had a bit of a release, and I think that The Walking Dead did that a little bit more. I think that it'd be a bit more engaging, because life is depressing enough, and I'm not sure if you just want to watch depressing. And I understand they're in a really depressing situation.
Atmosphere. Yeah.
But I know that for a fact that when things get really tense or stressful where I work, I tend to add like a joke to the proceedings to speed things up. Also because I have a sick sense of humor anyway.
You do.
So I think but for me it helps me cope with things. It's like a coping mechanism. And I think The Walking Dead sometimes lacks that coping, that coping mechanism.
Sort of like Facebook. Remember when Facebook used to be fun before all the politics got into it? Now it's just like so depressing. It's just like no one wants to laugh anymore. So I just post funny stuff now for the most part.
Well, I have a problem with stuff with politics, because instead of people bitching and moaning and groaning, why don't they just get off their ass and do something? And if they want the world to change the world. Don't sit there and moan and groan about it. If you don't like something that's going on, do something, Right. But, that's the world we live in. We're the age of moan. 2010, the year of the moon.
We're fixing to go into Mercury retrograde, I believe the 21st. So everybody lock your doors, stay in the house, go buy bread and milk, and don't leave.
Time to bring on the purge.
We need a purge. We really need one. Well, there's so many people I get off.
Well, it's the only way to save the greenhouse effect. I don't. No amount of recycling is going to actually save that. When you got when you got too many species like rabbits, if you got like an area, let's say a square mile of rabbits, and they overbreed, then disease comes down and takes care of them, because nature has a way of balancing. But when you're fighting nature and making everyone, solving all this, so nature can't wean out the overcrowding, and unfortunately,
it will eventually. The earth has a way of taking care of itself.
I do have to sit there and say, though, I do love the celebrities who fight against the
ones with the big carbon footprint and the huge palatial mansions and the airplanes and everything else.
I think
Leonardo DiCaprio, he went and flew all the way somewhere. I don't know if it was Great Britain or was it Australia to get his eyebrows done to fly back for the Oscars a year or two back. It's like, are you serious?
Well, there's another celebrity that was going around the world talking about saving the planet and the greenhouse effect, and apparently he wouldn't go anywhere unless it was by private plane. So it was only him and like 2 other people, and he'd fly to each city. Because,
sort of like Al Gore. Al Gore's got his own carbon footprint going too.
Yeah, you kind of like defeat the purpose of what you're trying to say.
I know. Shut up.
It's like I want the commoners to sit there and watch their carbon footprint, but because I have money, I can do what I like. So, well, before we get too political here, I guess we probably
no one wants to listen to us anymore. We got to make fun of somebody. We don't discriminate. We make fun of everybody.
Yeah, it's like what I put on my Facebook page. I'm not prejudiced. I hate everyone equally.
Exactly. Words to live by.
Really. So today we're going to be covering Shadow of the Doubt, which is 1943 film by Alfred Hitchcock. The interesting thing about Shadow of the Doubt, it was Alfred Hitchcock's first real American film. It wasn't the first film he made in America, but it's the first film that's actually set in America, and he actually filmed on location in Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa, yep.
Which is quite interesting. I mean, yes, he did make 2 other American films before this, which was Rebecca, which was set in England, and of course Saboteur, which was set in the Swiss Alps, I believe. So with this, this is his all-American movie. Another interesting point about Shadow of the Doubt, it was written by Thornton Wilder. Now, those people who don't know Thornton Wilder is probably people who haven't been to American high school. Thornton Wilder in American high school is very, very prominent because every year, not every year, but once in your high school life, you will have to read the play Our Town, which is written by Thornton Wilder. Another interesting thing, if you're into theater, Thornton Wilder did write another play called The Skin of Our Teeth, and he also wrote The Matchmaker, and The Matchmaker will be turned into a musical called Hello, Dolly. Yep. So Thornton Wilder is pretty much evident, and considering that Hello, Dolly was playing on Broadway with Bette Midler this season and to rave reviews, so it looks like Hello, Dolly is still out there in the world as well. Now, the film would be actually adapted a couple times after this. Cecil B. DeMille did a Lux Radio Theater program of it in January 3rd, 1944. And they actually had Theresa Wright from the film and William Powell playing the part of Uncle Charlie. I
think this was her top billing, wasn't it, for Theresa Wright the first time?
Yeah, it's Theresa Wright's first film as well. After this, she actually would go on to do quite a lot of fundamental films like Pride of the Yankees and films like that. And
I love that movie.
She was, this film kind of brought her out, but she was a theater actress, so she did have a theater background. And to this day, up until she died recently, she was continued acting through her whole career. So in 1950, Shadow of the Doubt was also another radio play that had Cary Grant playing the part of Uncle Charlie and Betsy Drake as the young Charlie. In 1949, the film was adapted twice with Joseph Cotten as the young Charlie, and second with Deanna Durbin in the role. And then there was an Academy Award theater production of it, with Shadow of the Doubt, being aired on September 11th, 1946. So just right after this film came out, we had pretty much, before the 50s closed, we had like 4 or 5 different productions of it. Of course, the film would be remade twice in 1958, Step Down to Terror, and again with the original title as a 1991 TV movie starring Mark Harmon as Uncle Charlie.
That's right. I forgot about that one.
But A Shadow of a Doubt also, if you are into the art house cinema, there's a really great film called Stoker that came out in 2013 by Park Chan-wook. And if you get a chance to see Stoker starring Nicole Kidman, it's a really good film. Very interesting. And that also has to give its nods to Shadow of Doubt. So, Vicky, is there anything else you want to add about the making of or the interesting plot points of Shadow of the Doubt?
Well, one, I thought it was beautifully filmed as far as Silver Screen goes. It was just well done. The lighting and everything. I enjoyed that a lot. I like old-timey movies like Maltese Falcon, all that old silver screen stuff, because you just don't make them like they used to. Mm-hmm. And it was shot on location in a small town, like you said, Santa Rosa. And it also was representative of sacred, wholesome, middle American values where the dark corruption kind of seeps in. And you got your good witch and your bad witch in this. And and it's kind of like the two Charlies against each other. I did think, however, though, it was kind of risque because I was wondering what was really going on with old Charlie and young Charlie half the time. It was kind of hinting around at things that you weren't supposed to talk about. You know what I mean?
Mm. That's what I quite like about Alfred Hitchcock, though. He does touch on these kind of nuances, and there is something always a bit wrong with it, but in an Alfred Hitchcock film, it just kind of feels somewhat right. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, well, it was kind of wrong, some of it, or at least I thought it was, but it had the usual dualities of good and evil. And they did notice that there are numerous pairs of doubles in the movie. Some that were obvious, like the two Charlies. You had the detectives. You had the government survey takers, the two murder suspects. And you had the two old guys that just sat there and tried to conceive of ways to kill each other through the whole movie. They wouldn't stop. That was funny. It's just like, well, we could have done this and we could have done that. But there was your comedy relief, your light moment like you're talking about.
So before we cut to a commercial break and trailer, Vicky, do you want to give a brief synopsis of the film?
Yeah. Okay. Joseph Cotten stars as Uncle Charlie, a calculating and charming killer who hides out in his relative's small hometown. There he befriends his favorite niece and namesake, young Charlie, who's played as Theresa Wright. She begins to suspect that he may be the famed Mary widow murderer. A deadly game of cat and mouse ensues as the psychopathic killer plots the death of his young niece to protect his secret.
So what we're going to do is going to cut to a commercial break. We do have some new commercials added into our roster that's been sent to us, so you get to listen to those. Just to let you know that if you find these offensive, you might want to get a sense of humor. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Okay, Bradley, tell the class about your holidays.
Yeah, it was really good. My dad built us a new kitchen. It's got wooden bench tops and some stupid self-closing drawers. There was a dishwasher that was a real and even a breakfast bar. Mum thought Dad was a massive.
Get a kitchen installed without teaching your kids new words. Visit ikea.com.au. We can plan, deliver and install the whole thing for you.
Is a foul sty. Do you know if you ripped the fronts off houses, you'd find swine?
I don't want you to touch my mother. So go away, I'm warning you. Go away or I'll kill you myself. Your hands. Oh, let me go, Uncle Charlie. Let me go.
Amazon. Oops, wrong Amazon. Although we both contain an array of diversity, the rainforest with all of its animals and us with all of our products, come check us over today and find all the products you need quickly and efficiently. And buy it with one click. And now you can even use us to donate to your favorite charities using Amazon Smile. Amazon Smile is worth your while. Come check us out today.
Welcome back. So, Vicky, what are your initial thoughts of Shadow of a Doubt by Alfred Hitchcock?
Well, it's your typical. You got the two Charlies. Uncle Charlie is Joseph Cotten, and you got Theresa Wright, who's playing his niece Charlie, and you've got the good and evil action going on between the two of them. And like I said, in most of Alfred Hitchcock's movies, now that I've revisited several of them since we started doing the series, I do notice that he always seems to, like you said, plant some kind of seed of whatever in your mind about, what's going on with certain people or individuals as characters in his stories, like the two Charlies. I thought that they were kind of just almost incestuous, like how they were acting towards each other. Mm-hmm. I mean, like she had a crush on him and he was buying her glamorous dresses and giving her dead people's rings and, the usual fare, But I mean, he plays an excellent villain. You really find yourself hating him and trying to figure out why nobody else is like, why isn't anybody else seeing this? it really kind of takes off when the newspaper incident happens, and he doesn't want the family to read the newspaper. And so he takes the newspaper and starts making the paper house for the little girl, just trying to hide it. And eventually she finds the paper because she's wondering what he's hiding, what's in the newspaper, because they think he's this worldly, well-traveled guy when in actuality he's a serial killer that kills widows and takes their money.
What I quite like about it is I love the way that Alfred Hitchcock puts his family together, because you have Anne, the younger daughter, and she's one of those nerdy little girls with the glasses. And the thing is, she's the smartest one out of all of them. She pegs everything. She puts everything together very, very quickly. But he always kind of has that kind of trope in his films where you have like the nerdy girl with the glasses who actually knows more and is a bit more clued on. And then, then he also has the little boy, which is Roger. And he's so cute. I mean, he's like one of those cute little boys. He's very boy-like. And, he kind of just is kind of there and he just does his business. And then you always have like the ingenue, which is Theresa Wright, which is, young Charlie or Charlotte Newton or.
Well, you got the parents too,
Charlie. And she's kind of like breaking out to her own, and then you got the parents, of course, and the parents are very quirky as well.
The parents seem like they're dumb as a box of rocks. They're just totally oblivious to anything that's going on underneath their nose in their own household. Mm-hmm. And then you get the two police that know something's up. They're trying to find A or B serial killer. They're in different parts of the country, and they show up and they give them the story, and they're just really gullible and don't. They're the all-American family, and they want to take pictures of everything. And
well, I'm kind of wondering if this has something to do with like World War II was coming to an end, and I think that maybe we were living in a time in America where everything, like your small town America, was very pure and innocent, and evil never really touched. Evil was something that happened in the big city, and so maybe with this false sense of security, maybe that's what they're trying to portray in this. Because it does feel that way. Because you do, I mean, though I have to then say the mother, which is wonderfully played by, Patricia Coolidge or Emma Newton. And the father is Henry Travers, and he's fantastic as a father. But
yes,
the mother,
he is.
But the mother always seems on the verge of a nervous breakdown whenever she's talking or anything. You ever notice?
Or the cooking. She's always worried when they were coming in to do the video, the all-American kitchen stuff, and she's trying to cook. And she goes, well, I can only beat my eggs for so long before, we can't do this now. Because she has to cook just precisely. So she's,
Well, I think that has a lot to do with like being, if they're doing an article on them, it's being the perfect housemakers and making the perfect bread, providing the perfect setting. It's a bit like when he's taking the photographs in the house. Oh, you can't photograph that chair because we haven't it needs to be redone. Oh, you can photograph this because this part of the room's clean. And it was kind of like that, what she was doing. Like, I think she wanted to be like the model housekeeper, the model housewife. And what I quite like about them, I mean, you do have young Charlie as, there are some grand, illusions of grandeur with her where she just thinks that everything, her parent, that she should be living maybe a richer life than what she has. Because there is, at the beginning of the movie, she's like laying in her bed, which I have to say is cross-cut with Uncle Charlie laying in the same position, meaning that there's a link between the two of them. But she's, her father comes in and she goes, oh, Mom, why are you wearing that hat that you're wearing? I told you not to wear that hat. And, Father, why, basically, why don't we have enough money? You guys working too hard. We don't have enough. And there's all that going on in the beginning of the film, which is quite interesting. Where meanwhile, the brother and sister are just happy with their lot, where you got, young Charlie basically unhappy with everything in the beginning. And then it's almost like, oh, well, because I'm finding my life so uneventful and unsatisfying, they're going to call Uncle Charlie and invite him over.
Well, he's so worldly and everything. So she's obviously got a crush on him, whether it's just like the uncle crush or just, she's got stars in her eyes for somebody that's traveled the world and everything else. But it's kind of funny when he starts to become a disappointment, though, especially with young Charlie. Like he's talking about, he lets his guard down. He's describing the elderly widows as fat, wheezy animals, I mean, he just goes into these diatribes about, just major, just nasty stuff he's saying. And he just all of a sudden he'll go off on all this stuff. And he's just talking about how, people are pigs and they deserve what they get just in the middle of dinner.
Well, the human world.
Sounds like you.
The human world's a spy. And we're just the pigs inhabiting it. But the funny thing about, Shadow of Doubt is one of my favorite Alfred Hitchcock films, and I think that the reason why is that I can kind of relate to it. I can actually kind of relate to Uncle Charlie, and I can actually relate to the small town.
I find that hard to believe.
Well, I think what it is like the simple fact is like, I guess in my own family dynamics, it's like, I'm not I don't go marrying widows and murdering them, because if I did, I would be a lot more wealthier than I am now. But but simple fact is like, I left a small town, I left my sisters behind, sort of thing. They they stayed in the hometown, they raised their families, a bit like the situation here. They tend to over sentimentalize the past, and then when I come back, since I moved to England, I did live in a couple other places. I lived in Chicago and Tulsa and Colorado and Ireland, and before I settled in London. And then when I go home, there is a sense of awe with my sister, with like, oh, he's coming back, he's so worldly and all this other stuff. I'm not that worldly, to be honest, because I travel doesn't make you worldly. But
no, it doesn't.
But there is that, my sister's like that. And then when I do leave, there's this like, there's these bittersweet tears of me going and what's going to happen, and will I ever see?
It's because you're so far away. I mean, we all left. We both came from the same area, and we couldn't wait to get out of there.
Yeah, but when you look at the family who stayed, and and they raised their families, and you probably realize it with your brothers and family who have stayed, that when you do go back, you do get this Uncle Charlie welcome when you go back. Yeah. And
people are all excited to see. I mean, I moved to Dallas, but people are always like, wow, it's great to see you again, because you're far away. And you did leave. And some people just chose to raise their families there. My family's still there. I enjoy going back to see everybody. But I understand what's going on with young Charlie, because she just got that wanderlust, and she's just a young girl, and she wants to just get out there and see everything.
Yeah.
That's what young girls do. They fantasize about going here and going there, and they want to have a better life somewhere else, because they're just so used to their hometown. When you realize it, though, sometimes when you do so far away, you actually do miss those elements, whether you liked your hometown or not, but there's certain things that you do miss when you go home.
Most definitely. I don't go home and think of myself better than where I left. I know that, my formative years back in Sackett's Harbor, Watertown, is basically,
the satellite city of Watertown, New York.
Well, it's what made me what I am today. Without that beginning, I probably, I'd be a totally different person, however good or bad that may be. And, and it do, I do find that that's what I quite like about Shadow of Doubt. You do get that, the all. Uncle Charlie's considered like a god. The sister's serving him breakfast in bed, or you can stay in bed for as long as, it's like, it's very odd that someone will stay in bed till 10 o'clock, and how can you eat breakfast in bed and all this.
I know when I go home to visit, my mother does not bring me breakfast in bed. No. I go downstairs with the rest of the grunts.
Well, yeah, I think I get that as well, which is fine. Good thing. But, simple fact is that, that he is treated like, there's like a treatment of royalty about him when he does arrive, which is quite interesting, because sometimes I do feel that a little bit when I go home. It's like, there's like, of course it does wear off after a couple of days, and I realize, oh God.
Around 2 or 3 days, it's like, yeah, he's the same. Fuck him.
You can just carry on the way you started, you know what I mean? I'm not waiting on you, Hannaford, anymore.
Yeah.
But I did quite like that. And I also like the simple fact that, there's a lot of mystery within the film as well. You do have like the simple fact that, you have the two guys looking for Uncle Charlie at the beginning, and, you don't know if they're cops, or maybe they're looking for money, or because he has all this money lying around. So you don't really know what their position is. And as the story unfolds, it actually becomes clear who these people are. And I quite like that. There's always a lot of mystery about them. Even with Uncle Charlie, you don't really realize that. There are, Alfred Hitchcock does give us a lot of clues. The Merry Widow,
right. And there's that waltz that they keep playing.
Yeah.
And they kept interjecting that, and I was just wondering why they kept interjecting that. And I watched it twice, and they just kept putting it in there like it was was it relevant to young Charlie?
Why is it relevant is the simple fact that at that time, that was one of the largest shows to watch. It's called The Merry Widow. And it was this operetta, and it was a great big theater show. And it was very popular. But The Merry Widow is about a widow.
Right.
And of course, he's the guy who's killing widows, isn't he?
Right.
So that's why it's and doesn't make sense. Like when you even watch the opening credits, you have like the people dancing in the Merry Widow, and then
right.
But then as you know, I think a Merry Widow is not that well known today, but I think at the time it probably meant a lot more. I had to like look it up, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's why. Okay, now it all comes together. But
they said it was based on a true story of Earl Leonard Nelson. He was a mass murderer in the 1920s. He was known as the Gorilla Man.
Well, there was also there's been quite a few people that would actually prey on women and kill them like widows. I mean, wasn't it the honeymoon killers? Weren't they doing the same thing?
Yeah, well, back then especially, you didn't have this huge database, and you didn't have a cell phone, so it was probably, you know, a whole lot easier to get away with, you know, when they were making movies like this back in the day, because you didn't have, you know, it was so much easier to catch people with all the technology. You can't really get away with it anymore.
No, I mean, which is kind of sad, because it's only a matter of time before the police knock on my door. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
No, but I mean, you know, yeah, of course, with modern technology and stuff like this, and I have to sit there and say that, you know, your ID has pictures on them now and everything like that. But back then, I mean, well, even in England, when I first moved to England, the driver's licenses had no pictures on them. They were just like a folded up piece of paper with their details on it.
We didn't either. New York State, we had a green card. It was just a green piece of paper, basically. It didn't have no license on it, or it had your license, but I mean, you didn't have no picture. And that's why fake IDs were so much easier back in the day.
Yeah, which means, you know, all you need to do is, you know, anyone can walk around as you, and you can walk around as anybody, really. It's just as long as you're, you know.
Kind of look like the description.
Well, the only description on these sort of things was your height, your weight sometimes, not always, and the color of your hair and the color of your eyes, and that's it. Oh, and your ethnicity would have to match.
Right.
You know, sort of thing. But that was it, really. So I guess you could pretty much change your ID at a whim if you wanted to.
Yeah, it would have been a lot easier to get away with it. I mean, you did have, back in that time, you had a lot of the, you know, the big serial killers, but you didn't hear about it as much, you know, with the advent of social media. Now you got all the true crime is out there, and everybody knows about this one and that one.
I've also found it quite interesting that young Charlie pretty much gave up her friends to go on a date.
She did what?
She gave up her friends to go on a date.
Oh, I know, and she got caught. There's nothing worse than saying you got something else going on or you're sick and you get busted and someone sees you there. It's like, oh.
I know. Oh, I feel better, and she's there with this like strapping young detective guy, and you're like, okay.
She's like looking. You see the look she gave her? She's like, yes, whatever.
Like, who's this guy?
But like I said, the comedy relief came with the old guy, her father, and what was his name? That they were always trying to kill each other. They were talking about it, the perfect murder. Herbie and Charlie's father. They're always trying to talk about the perfect murder throughout the whole movie. They're talking about ways to kill. I've come up with a way to kill you this way and that way. And you know, you're always talking about your light moments with Alfred Hitchcock, but he always has the duality, like the description says. He's got two people, sort of like in the other movie with the married couple, and she was always solving the murders.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the frenzy
for the husband.
Yeah, frenzy. But what I quite liked about what's quite interesting is Hume Cronyn, Herbie, who played the part of Herbie, you know, Jessica Tandy's husband.
It was? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were married for, until their deaths, actually. But the interesting thing about him is that he was very young. But what they did was he was up for the part. I was watching this documentary, and he was basically up for the part of the show. And his agent goes, oh, I think there's been a mistake. There's no way you're going to get them. So he goes to meet Alfred Hitchcock. And Alfred Hitchcock is sitting down with him and decides to discuss, you know, doing the Alfred Hitchcock thing when he cast them. We never actually make them read anything or audition. He would have a conversation with them. So he's just discussing with them. And he got the part. And then Alfred Hitchcock said, what we'll do is we'll gray your hair, just wear a pair of glasses, and no one will know that you're not that age. And it works. Because Hugh Cronyn at this time is in his 20s, but he looks about 40 in this.
Yeah, they made him, I mean, I wouldn't guess, because he looked much older. They did the makeup really well to make, you know, the part integrate really well, because I didn't know he was that young till you said that.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting that I love the way that Alfred Hitchcock, I mean, one good thing I can say about Alfred Hitchcock in all his films, I don't think there's ever been a time that you watch any of his films that anyone's been miscast.
No, I have to agree with you on that. And, there might have been something to it as opposed to, doing the typical casting routine and whatever, because he actually talked to all of his actors and he just decided by that venue that he wanted them in his movies. And that, I don't think anybody does that. I think he's probably the only one that's done that.
Well, I think the interesting thing about Alfred Hitchcock, from what I've been able to gather, is watching various documentaries, and as we go into the season, we'll be covering a lot more Alfred Hitchcock, of course.
Right.
But they all seem to match the same thing, that he would, before the film even cast or before it even started, he had everything all mapped out. He knew exactly what camera angles he's going to use. Everything is storyboarded. The script's done. His wife, Alma, is detrimental in all his films. I mean, if it wasn't for her, you probably wouldn't have Alfred Hitchcock. And without Alfred Hitchcock, you probably wouldn't have Alma. The two of them were such a strong bond and, a strong team together.
He was definitely his right arm.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And, as I think we said about in Psycho, is that when she watches a film, she doesn't watch everything together. She actually watches it. When she watches a film, she sees it frame by frame, which is quite interesting. I don't do that. My brain doesn't work that way, but she, that was the woman by his side. So I do think that, with shadow of doubt, because Thornton Wilder wrote it, and Thornton Wilder left to do something in New York, and then I think Sally Benson came in to finish up the project, and then of course Alma basically had the final say, and then she scripted it, and I think that's why we always have a strong script, because at the end of it, you always get Alma in there like tweaking it so it all works. So.
Back then there was a war production board that restricted maximum cost of $5,000 for set construction.
Was there? God. Because I know that they had to build the house. They did almost all of it on location, but there are some scenes that they had to rebuild the house in the studio and reshoot some of the in-house stuff.
Yeah, they did use the Northwestern Pacific Railroad for the train, and they did have a house. I guess it was 904 McDonald Avenue in Santa Rosa. So who's ever still living there, you're probably going to have people come by now. But the house is still there. The library they actually used. Did you think she was ever going to get to the library when she was running to the library to get the information from the newspaper?
Well, I have to say the only problem I would have if I was going to nitpick about this film is timing. Time seems to move or slow at the director's pace. So sometimes it's it seemed really late at night, and all of a sudden she's running to the library, and she gets there just as it closed, and you're kind of going, and then she goes, "Oh, it closed at 9 o'clock." Did she say, or 8 o'clock or something?
Yeah, 9 o'clock. I think it was 9 o'clock.
I do. This is another Alfred Hitchcock trope. The secondary characters. I mean, the librarian was brilliant. You just looked at her, you knew exactly who she was. Like, if I had opened this, if I do this for you, I have to do this for 1,000 people.
Well, it's true. Like, you take one bean on, you got to take the whole burrito. So, but yeah, he does do well with those secondary characters. He doesn't. There's not one person in any of his films that doesn't have some importance, even like the secondary characters, because they do stand out.
Well, and I also like about Alfred Hitchcock, there's never a throwaway character. Every character is spot on. It's like and they're there for a purpose. There's never just someone there just for the sake of having someone there. They're there for a purpose. But it doesn't seem evident until you actually start thinking back on it. It's like, okay, it all comes together. I think another thing that's quite interesting is that I was watching a documentary on this, and the interesting thing about the house that they used, the people who owned the house were so excited they're going to use it, and they took the house because they needed something that was slightly run down because of the social standing, the economic standing,
right,
for the cast members in the film. But because they were so excited Alfred Hitchcock was going to use their house, they went and repainted it and had it redone. So the crew had to come in and damage it back to the way it was. It's like, oh.
Well, you got to make it. Well, it's sort of like when you go in to film a movie and you're using somebody's on location house. You have to move all the pictures. You have to remove anything that remotely identifies that as your home to make it look like what you have scouted it out to be. But one thing I do find that I've noticed now that I'm older, since we've been watching the Alfred Hitchcock series. I do notice that he does have that underlying current of something that does make you uncomfortable through the movie.
Yeah.
Sort of like the two Charlies. There's something wrong, like in his other, that like Psycho. There's absolutely something wrong. But he's got this something to kind of gnaws at your comfort level a little bit, if you know what I mean, in each one of his movies. It just seems like he does that on purpose.
I think also I quite like when I find enough Hitchcock film that kind of centers around the villain, in this case Joseph Cotten or Anthony Perkins in Psycho, you're quite drawn to that villain. So
right.
They're not like this kind of villain that you normally see, and a lot of films today do this. Whether whoever they're casting as the villain, you can always tell that they're the villain. They just look the villain or something like this. I think I was watching a French program called La Manta, or The Mantis in English. And it's like, they had this killer guy in there, and it's like, it just looked like a killer. It's like if you saw this person on the street, you think killer. So you're thinking, why are you casting people like this? You know what I mean? And that's what I quite like.
Just looks the part without looking the part.
You get someone ugly, teeth missing, hair browning, or hair loss, and a bit slimy looking, and you're like,
sort of like the dudes from Wrong Turn.
Precisely. And you kind of look at them like, okay, you can tell that they're a killer. Or when you watch a film and you're like watching the film, you're getting really into it, and then they then they introduce the person who's doing the killing, and you're like, he looks like a killer. It's like, you can tell, and he just has that killer.
It's him.
The kind of picture that, for instance, that Jeffrey Dahmer was a really good looking guy because he was able to pick up guys.
He was an extremely attractive man.
But when you see the pictures that they put of him after they caught him, they're like that. He looks like I said.
He looks like hammered shit after a while. Yeah.
He like Charles Manson the same way. Charles Manson wasn't that weird looking. It's only after he was caught in those life images that came out.
Like the tabloid photos where his eyes look big, black, and beady.
Yeah. So.
Hi, Isaac. Speaking of beady.
And then after that, everyone goes, "Oh, he looked evil." But the thing is, he could not have looked evil, because if he looked evil, he wouldn't have had his, followers and his cult members, because they're, you're not going to go after someone like, "Oh, they look evil, I think I'll follow them." And I think that's where Hollywood gets it wrong. But this is where Alfred Hitchcock gets it right, because all his killers look like really. Joseph Cotten looks real worldly. Anthony Perkins in Psycho looks like the boy next door, like the someone you could get to
mildly
know.
Charismatic.
Yeah, and I think that's what you need when you have a killer in a film, because I think that's what killers are in real life. They are charismatic, because how else are they going to grab the people that they grab?
Yeah, so. Especially cult leaders and whatnot. I don't know how Jim Jones pulled off what he pulled off.
I'm sure it was that blue polyester pantsuit that probably did it.
Oh my God. Long live the 70s. Oh, God. The fashion risk.
All those people smelled in Guyana because, all that polyester in a hot, humid area. Yeah, it would have been pretty.
I wouldn't have been the one that found that shit. No.
Well, I'm talking about before they found it, before the mass suicide, because everyone was wearing polyester, and didn't look like there was any deodorant stores anywhere soon. So
yeah, that polyester. You won't. God, nope. We never worn it.
No.
Nope. My mother was smart. She raised me well. We had cotton. Polyester was uncomfortable anyway.
Well, I remember my mom going up to. We had this person. I won't mention his name because we kind of bullied him a little bit. But he came to our house, and my mom one day said to her, "Goes, how many polyesters they murdered to make that outfit?" It's like, yeah, no. My family always made sure you lived in cotton, because cotton lets the body breathe. It's not,
Well, it's more comfortable. Polyester sticks to your skin. It is not comfortable.
Well, interesting fact about polyester, when they were making the Brady Bunch movie, and what they did was they brought out all the old clothes in the Brady Bunch, and they're all polyester, and the kids said those clothes stank. It just held like all the smells, and no matter how many times they wash it, that's the smells in them. Because you can't polyester is basically made out of petroleum. You know what I mean? So it's nothing about that's going to make you breathe, is it?
I don't even know how we got off on the polyester. Tangent.
That's what we do at the Literary Podcast. We just go off on a tangent. It has no relevance to what we're covering. Well, going back to Shadow of Doubt, I do think that Shadow of Doubt is considered Alfred Hitchcock's favorite film. This is his favorite film of all the films he made. This is his favorite, and yes. I have to sit there and say that there's so much. This is kind of one of those films that works in the murder mystery, but there is a bit of horror to the whole proceedings of it as well.
Yeah, well, you had to see, you knew he was going to try to kill his niece, whoever watched it, spoilers, but you knew that he was going to go after her, first the stairs, then the garage,
Well, even the ending of it was very effective.
The train scene, how he
let's be honest.
Died.
Yeah, because the thing is, she didn't push him. What happened was he was going to push her. He's trying to push her. She kind of fought her way to the side, and when he went to get the final push, he fell through the door, so she didn't kill him in the end. Basically. And I also like the simple fact that, then what you have is you have this family that's going to be changed forever, because you got Charlie, who knows the truth, who's not going to ruin her relationship with the mom. She doesn't even ruin the remembrance of Uncle Charlie from all the horrible things that he did to her. She's still protecting her mother. So they have this grand funeral for him, and the mother's not the wiser. But that young Charlie is always going to be changed, and that. Yeah. And that's what makes the film work, because
I think it's death of innocence, basically. Is the main gist of the story.
Yeah, and I do think that when the life enters a small town, the dark sides of it, you do get that. And I do have to sit there and say that Alfred Hitchcock portrays this very well. Even if you're just into watching the film and the way the film processes go, because you get this bright sky and the train comes in, bringing Uncle Charlie, and everything's very sunny in Santa Rosa. But when the train comes in, and what you notice is that when Uncle Charlie comes off the train, all of a sudden the sky darkens.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of little nuances. Every time I watch this film, I always notice a bit more, and things get a bit darker. A bit like, I think David Lynch used this when he made Blue Velvet. Blue Velvet was a bit like that, where everything's very bright, and when the story got darker, the film got darker as far as the way it was filmed.
That was one of the weirdest freaking movies I've ever seen.
Oh, Blue Velvet.
It was just weird.
I know, it is very odd. We get Isabella Rossellini coming out going, "I looked for you in my closet last night." It's like, what the hell? Good old Kyle MacLachlan.
Do a whole hour and a half on just Blue Velvet alone. You can pick that one apart.
Well, I think I had a Blue Velvet moment in real life in Watertown, New York, when my sister took me to this weird family's house. Which is a story for another time, because the poor guy.
There's so many weird families in Watertown to choose from.
Oh, I know. It was scary.
I'll just let my mind run wild.
It was only a matter of time before someone got out a microphone and started singing a Roy Orbison song. So, and all these other white people started dancing in the background to it. So.
Then he had, well, he took her to that CD bar too. Don't forget the CD bar.
Oh, God, yeah.
She's trying to get back that ring that had the initials that matched the initials of one of the widows that was killed. So,
another thing, Charlie kind of goats him along as well, young Charlie. That your uncle, I know she's trying to force him to leave because she wants to keep her mom memory of him because she loves her brother so much. And I have a feeling that what you basically have is a brother and sister who have no one left in the world but each other, as far as their past, and the only living family members outside the family that you're giving birth to. So you have that going on. But she does goat her uncle, when she's going down the stairs and she's got the ring on and she's tapping it on the.
Oh yeah, she's coming down the banister and she's showing it all the way down.
And the simple fact that she's dating one of the cops that's investigating her uncle.
Detective Saunders.
I know, and you're just thinking, okay, well, this doesn't get your uncle frightful. But at the end of the day, I guess Uncle Charlie. Sometimes I wonder if they moved the ending, because I was wondering if should Uncle Charlie get away, and she lets him get away, and that maybe the Hays Code put in that he has to die because, and at that time, if you do something evil, you have to be punished for it, and there's that going on in films at that moment. But thinking of that, I think it does work that Uncle Charlie does die, because he would have to. You can't have someone know everything about you. And if you've done something that bad, you can't have that person living, because you're only living on borrowed time. Suppose they have a change car, or let's say if the mother died, let's say that her mom died, then she can always come out with her Uncle Charlie, because once the mother dies, she wouldn't have to protect her mother anymore. Because the whole thing is about protecting her mother, isn't it? So.
Well, it was funny because he thought he was exonerated when they found the other guy. But then he breaks the news that the alternative suspect was chased by police and killed by an airplane propeller. That was random. Like, would he just run into a fucking airplane or what?
I know.
So he conveniently he's killed by an airplane propeller. So the Uncle Charlie's back in the game, you know?
Well, you know, the thing is with Charlie is like, whoever these widows were, I mean, they were wealthy. I mean, the money that he puts into the bank, you know, I can't remember the exact amount of money, but I mean,
40 grand, I think it was.
But 40 grand in that time would be like over $1 million today.
Or at least $500,000. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was a lot of money, you know, and he's just carrying it around like it's nothing.
Yeah. But when he goes into the bank, he tries to make her father look bad. He starts talking about embezzlement and all this other stuff. And there's all these customers in the bank. It's like, oh man, he was an inopportune person to have around because he just, like I said, he come out with this, just blurt out all this nonsense, and you knew there was something wrong with him. I mean, as a viewer, you know there's something wrong with him. But when he's talking about, you know, what happens when widows get fat and too old, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like he's saying this in front of these nice people, including the family, and no one's catching on that there's something really not right about this guy because he just randomly pops off about stuff like that.
Well, I'm kind of wondering, because I was actually thinking about that as well, and I was kind of wondering if it have anything to do with the simple fact that because this is the mother's only living relative, and I think the father like puts up with it because this is what makes my wife happy, maybe because some of the stuff he says to her, you know, his brother-in-law is not nice. It's like what you're saying.
No, not at all. He's actually quite mean-spirited toward the brother-in-law. You know? Yeah,
and you're just kind of, and there's like no respect to be shown at all. Uncle Charlie doesn't give anyone any kind of respect. I mean, he might smooze them a little, but he's one of those people like tells you that it's like, oh, I like your hair, but you know, it's sad about, you know, the zit on your face. He's one of those people, you know, like
right.
gives you like a compliment, but then there's a backhand to it. You know what I mean? It's like looking at your face, oh, you look so pretty, and then slapping you across the face. He's one of those kind of people. There's always that evil about. I mean, everything that he says, there's always that this kind of like twisted meanness to him, which.
He was mean. That's why Joseph Cotten did such a good job, though. He did a good job. He got the right part. He pulled it off, and you know, it was just. I was trying to figure out, you know, when he locked his niece in the garage. This is one of those like girls breaking their ankle and needing to be carried kind of situations, and you know, she's got the car, it's running, and she's locked in the garage. I would have taken the car and ran it through the doors instead of sitting there choking on, you know, exhaust.
Well, wasn't the keys missing or something?
That's right. You could start a car back then and take the key out. Yeah, but you still. Yeah. But if the car was running, why couldn't she put it in gear?
Well, precisely, but you know.
And then run it through the garage. I mean, I would have rode that sucker right through. I wouldn't have stayed in there. And then she's the first person he sees when she wakes up. Get her out.
Yeah, like great.
Like rubbing salt into the wound. Yeah. She almost falls down the stairs. I forgot. Was that the only two things he did to her? Wasn't there something else?
There's that. There's the car. Yeah, and then there's always the threat that, you know. I mean, I would be quite surprised that. I don't know how she could have slept in the same house on that he was like in the room next to her. But
if I knew one of my relatives was trying to off me, there's no way I'd be in the house or he'd be out. There's just no way. But then again, it's a movie. You can't think of things like this because it's supposed to be entertaining.
Well, she is sharing a room with her sister. So, I mean, if he's going to do away with you, he's going to do away with your sister as well, I suppose. So,
But he was going to leave. And then they gave him that big dinner send-off thing where he was supposed to give a speech to the ladies' club. Like he's the kind of guy that needs to be around a bunch of widows in a ladies' club. It's like smorgasbord, you know.
I think that was a missed opportunity, but I'd love to hear that speech. So.
Mrs. Potter. He missed out on that. She was eyeballing him, and she had a lot of money.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I just don't, you know, they always say people get taken advantage of, and just like, I guess you don't know what's happening, and you just see stuff like this, like, what's wrong with you? You know there's something wrong with this person.
Well, you know, the thing is, I still think it's being done. Maybe not for monetary values, but, you know, with the new dating apps that we have, everyone that I know that's on one of those dating apps has some horrible horror stories going through about that, you know, whether the person's not who they were meant to be. I mean, for instance, I have this friend, and she's using Tinder or Plenty of Fish or whatever.
Oh God, Plenty of Fish is just as plenty of hoes. That's all that is.
But she met up with this guy, and this, you know, and the guy was really nice to her, and she you know, she hasn't put out or anything like that on the first date. You know, she has, she has her little rules that she lives by, and that's one of her rules. And after she met up with she met with Coffee, and he like contacted her and goes, "Oh, it was so nice meeting you. Did you get home okay?" And they went on a second date. He did the same thing. She had to go away and do some stuff, and then she came back a couple weeks later. Come to find out, she found out that this guy who was, she really liked, he was so friendly, but he had like 5 or 6 different profiles on this thing, and was going by, and basically with 5 or 6 different backgrounds and 5 or 6 different accents that he would use depending on who he was speaking to. And she found all this out. But
wow,
and the thing is like, this kind of stuff still goes on today, doesn't it? It's like, okay, you don't really know who these people are. Are they taking advantage of you? And what are they hoping to get out of it? I mean, they're not going to get money out of her, so I don't have to worry about
you know what I wish they bring back that was funny in the wee hours of the morning was chat roulette. There are some pretty sick tickets on that.
Well, that was like speed dating, wasn't it?
Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
I have a bunch of favorite movies. I watch them all on Shudder.com for only $4.99 a month.
That's a scary low price.
But if I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be Scream.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the only streaming service that lets me watch hundreds of horror movies on demand.
I'll be right back.
Hello? Hello? Hello, are you gonna subscribe? Hello?
Go to Shudder.com to subscribe. If you dare.
Morning face. You get it when you don't sleep well. This is what happened to Linda.
Morning, guys.
Good morning. Ah, what is that thing?
It's me, Linda.
Oh my God, it talks! Run!
No, it's me, Linda from HR.
It looks hungry! Save the children! Save them! Stay back, I've got mace!
Ow, that went in my eyes.
Quit moving!
It's called beauty sleep for a reason. And there's never been a better time to get some.
Get 20% off IKEA Sultan mattresses. IKEA, love your home.
So, Vicky, what are your final thoughts on Shadow of a Doubt?
Well, I liked it. Like I said, the villain was great. Joseph Cotten did a great job. Theresa Wright did a great job. The way it was filmed, it was beautifully filmed, and it was like the epitome of silver screen. Had a great plot, good versus evil, the usual fare. I liked it. It was definitely Alfred Hitchcock's baby. You could tell it was one of his favorite movies because it stands out a little more than the others in certain capacities. But I enjoyed it. I suggested it a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of Hitchcock fans out there that would enjoy it.
I think that if you're getting into Alfred Hitchcock, I think you could probably start out with Shadow of a Doubt quite easily, because I think it's one of the most easiest films to watch, and it's one of the most fantastically acted. As I said before, it was Alfred Hitchcock's favorite film that he ever did. All of his whole canon, this is his favorite. And I can see why. There's so much going for it. It's a strong script, strong characters, and Shadow of a Doubt stands up there as one of my favorite films. And as I said before, I think it has a lot to do with, it kind of does remind me of, my family relationships and stuff like that. And some of that actually bleeds through for me. So Shadow of a Doubt, I would highly recommend. So before we go, I'd like to sit there and say thank you for listening to us on the the Literary License Podcast. If you're looking to find us on our website, you can go to www.llpodcast.com and sign up with our newsletter. And if you join up with our newsletter, a lucky winner each month may win a special edition Season 1 t-shirt. And what we'll do is we'll have those posted up on our website very soon and what the t-shirt will look like. We're still working this part of it out. So, and you can also find us on our social platformings, also into Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, and Tumblr. So before we go, next month, we're going to start our Christmas month, and we're going to be doing the seminal 1969 classic, Jesus Christ Superstar, written by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice, the concept album, and the 1971 film directed by Norman Jewison, who would go on to direct and win an Oscar for Moonstruck. So for no further ado, I'd like to say good night. So good night, Vicky.
Night, Keith.
And we'll talk to you next week when we'll be doing our special Shudder episode. Good night.
He said he wanted a typical American family. I told him we weren't a typical American family.
Well, if he's going to ask a lot of questions, he can leave me out of it.
Oh, but you could tell him so much more than any of us could. He's going to take our pictures, too.
Pictures?
My, isn't that lovely? You see, there were really two young men. One of them takes the pictures.
Oh, there were two.
Yes, Mr. Graham was the nicest. Oh, he doesn't want us to dress up or anything. He just wants us to act the way we always do.
Charlie lives in a one-room apartment with a mirror on the floor. Sits down staring up at the ceiling, knows what he's looking for. Try to hold on, Charlie. The future is gone, Charlie. Try to be strong, Charlie. You've got to hang on, Charlie. Charlie lives in a one-room apartment, lying on his bed. Dreams of guns and distant thunder ringing in his head. Lost it on a road to nowhere, night of black and heat. 10 men dead and 1 man sorry, crying to the beat. Try to hold on, Charlie. The future is gone, Charlie. Try to be strong, Charlie. You've got to hang on, Charlie. Hold on, social race and a ministry. Hold on, total waste impossibility. Hold on, lost my face to a foreign land. Hold on, I took my heart and then my hand.
Try to hold on, Charlie, Charlie. Your future is gone, Charlie. Try to be strong, Charlie, Charlie. Got to hang on, Charlie. Try to hold on, Charlie, Charlie. The future is gone, Charlie. Try to be strong, Charlie, Charlie. You've got to hang on, Charlie.
Hold on, social race and ministry. Hold on, total waste impossibility. Hold on, lost my face to a foreign land. Hold on, took my heart and then my hand. Charlie lives in a one-room apartment with a mirror on the floor. Sits down staring up at the ceiling, knows what he's looking for. Memories of a burning summer, trying to forget, hoping for a bitter winter, frozen with regret. Try to hold on, Charlie. Your future is gone, Charlie. Try to be strong, Charlie. You've got to hang on, Charlie. Try to hold on, Charlie. Your future is gone, Charlie. Try to be strong, Charlie. You've got to hang on, Charlie.
Husbands who've spent their lives making fortunes, working and working. Then they die and leave their money to their wives, their silly wives. What do the wives do, these useless women? You see them in the hotels, the best hotels every day by the thousands. Drinking the money, eating the money, losing the money at bridge, playing all day and all night, smelling of money. Proud of their jewelry, but of nothing else. Horrible. Faded, fat, greedy women.
They're alive. They're human beings.
Are they?